I'm just going to, give you some important tips about the portal security, portal authentication settings, user registrations, and the portal authentication provider. And yeah, then Ashish will demonstrate some of the live examples that how you can set up the Azure AD B2C. All right. So I'll just quickly start this portal security with, with a very basic, real-time example of airport security. I know it's quite basic for everyone, like how the portal authentication work, but those who are very new to this Power Apps portal and they are still struggling to find the information like what is anonymous user, what is authentication, what is web role, what is stable permissions. So this is just a single example through which you can just imagine all the portal security components, all the authentication components. So the first thing, when you go to the airport, you have to go to the flight. The first thing that you do it, you show your identity to your security check, right? So that identity could be, anything. It depends actually. Usually we use the passport to show our identity. So in the similar way, in the dynamic in the Power Apps portal, we have the identity providers as well. So there are different types of identity provider that provides you the identity, that we call it as a that we call it as a Facebook, Twitter, Azure Active Directory, Google. So these are all the identity providers that gives you the identity, and those identities are basically used to allow access to the portal, right? So in the similar fashion, when you go to the airport, you show your identity as a passport, and this gives you the access to the premise of the airport, right? So that process is called the authentication. So authentication is nothing but just to show your identity. All right. The second thing is that once you enter into the airport, you get the boarding pass, right? So that boarding pass, act as a web role or with some permission associated with that. That means, if you have the boarding pass, that doesn't mean that you have access to everything, that all the features or all the facilities of the airport, right? You have the boarding pass. That means there are certain conditions, there are certain permission associated with that, right? You can go to the food court, you can go to the, the boarding gates, and you can, board to the flight. So these are all the permission you are associated with your boarding pass. So this is the similar fashion in the portal. Once you are authenticated, you are associated with some sort of roles or permissions. That means if you are entering to the portal, if you are authenticating to the portal, that doesn't mean that you can do everything in the portal, right? So we can restrict the access of the portal using the web roles and the permission associated with that. The another thing is that the authorization part, right? Authentication is just to show your identity. Once your identity is, proven that you are the right people to, have the access, then you have the authorization. So authorization is basically the process which actually decide at what sort of, facilities you can use it. Right. So for example, if you have the boarding pass, you authenticated successfully, then you can go to the boarding gate, you can use the airport lounge facilities. So that is called the authorized access. Okay, until you have the boarding pass not with you, until you are not authenticated, you are not allowed to go to the boarding gates or airport lounges, right? So in the similar fashion, in the Power Apps portal also, if you have the authorization, sorry, if you authenticated successfully, if you have the web roles and permissions, then definitely you can interact with the data which is stored in the dataverse, right? So this is a part of authorization. One extra thing is that some of the features of the airport, some of the facilities of the airport that you don't want to, have the access to utilize them, right? And those called authorization as an anonymous access. So sometimes when you go to the airport, if you have to utilize the parking facility, some of the food court that is the outside of the the airport premises, if you want to utilize them, you don't need to show your passport, you don't need to show your identity, right? So that access is called anonymous access. So that is the same thing happened with the portal as well, because sometimes when we design the website, some of the features, or obviously that should not be the confidential one, some of the feature we want to give access to the users, that they can exit on the portal without being logged into the system, right? So that access is called the anonymous access. So this is just a simple example of the portal security. Now let me discuss about each component in more details. So portal security basically consists of two things: authentications and the authorizations. Authentication means who am I, the process of validating the user identity. Authorization means once your identity is proved, then what sort of data you can access, right? What I want to do in the portal, what I want to do in the application. So that is basically part of the authorization. Another thing is that the portal architecture. This is very important to understand, like how the portal actually works. So how the portal authentication works, how the portal, the authorization works. So portal. So when you create any portal or when you install any portal in your Power Platform environment, it actually creates a Azure web app in the Active Directory. Okay, so with each portal you have a unique web app available in your Active Directory, right? So you can manage your portal, you can control the access of the portal using that web app as well. So if you have a requirement like you want to block the access of the portal to a specific group of users, despite of having they have the the license of the portal, they have the the admin access of the portal, but instead of that, but despite of that you want to restrict them, right, based on the location, based on the some certain users, based on the IP addresses, then definitely you can manage that using that web app that got created when you install the portal, because we have the feature called conditional access policies, right? So you can create a conditional access policy, you can create a group where you can put all these users in that group and associate that conditional access policy to that particular web app. So this is the one additional layer of security you can provide to the portals, right? So this is a very important thing. Once you create a portal app, once you install the portal, it actually creates a web app in the Active Directory. Okay, and it acts as a client, right? So it's a client application. Now, obviously, if you have to access the data, we have to interact with the server like any application in this world. There is a concept of client and server. You make the request from the client side, you get the response from the server side, right? But not without the authentication. So the first thing is that you make the request from the portal side. You make the request, it goes to the portal server. Portal servers redirect you to the particular identity provider. So identity provider could be anything. It could be Active Directory, it could be Active Directory B2C, Google, Facebook, Twitter. So there are list of identity providers are there. So it's not necessary that your username, password, or your identity will only be stored in the Microsoft Active Directory, right? So you can have your identity stored in other databases as well, other identity providers as well. Okay, so server will basically decide. So when you request to access the portal, it will redirect you to the particular identity provider that you have chosen. So for example, if you have chosen like Active Directory, so it will actually redirect user to the Active Directory login page where you have to put your username and password. Once your username password you enter, it will actually check your identity in that particular identity provider, whether you are an authenticated user or not. If your identity is verified, then you get the key, or I can say it's a token. You get it back from the identity provider, and that token you give it to the client application. Okay, now you client application now have the token. Now in the fifth call, you call the SDK. It's a web API call. It's a dynamic 365 SDK call along with that token, and then perform the operation in the Dataverse. Now Dataverse give the response back to your portal app. So this is the way how you can perform the transaction in the Dataverse. So like you simply log into the portal and access the data, but you don't know like how the in the background the portal is interacting with the Microsoft Dataverse, right? Because as we know, like everything in the background, if you have to communicate your application, whether you are creating custom application or it's a portal application, if you have to interact with the Dataverse or with the Microsoft SQL Server in the background, you have to call the SDKs, right? So portal is nothing, it's just calling a SDK in the background in order to make the in order to perform the transaction in the database, right? So this is a very high level architecture of the portals. Then you can understand like how the authentication and authorization works. Moving on to the next topic, like portal authentication, we have some components like portal contacts, web roles, and the table permissions. So basically, there are three components comes to the picture when you talk about the authentication. Contacts, like I had seen a lot of today about the significance of using contacts. So you have been using Dynamic 365, so like the user identity in case of Dynamic 365 you stores in the user table, right? So in the similar fashion, whoever log into the portal, his identity is getting stored in the portal contacts. No matter whether it's a Dynamic 365 user, it's an external user, it's your partner, whoever is going to authenticate from the portal, his identity is getting stored in the portal contacts. Okay, without portal contacts, no one can access the portal. Okay, it's a different thing that your credential is getting stored in the separate Active Directory or separate identity provider, but your identification information that you are registered from the portal, which identity you are using, whether you are and for which role you are associated to. So this all the information is stored in the contact table. Okay. Now, once you have the contact, you must have some role associated with you, similar like the security role in the Dynamics 365. So you can have the multiple web roles. We have some list of out-of-box roles available, but you can create your own roles as well as per your business requirement. Okay. Now, without only the role cannot be, used to restrict the portal access, right? To restrict the portal data. Obviously, we have to perform some sort of table permissions as well, right? So we have the table permissions similar like the access label in the security role, where we individually on the individual table we provide the access like organization access, business unit level access, or the parent child business unit access. In the similar way, we have the global parental, self, contact, and account level table permission scopes as well. So these are the three major component who actually made this portal authentication. Portal authentication settings. Okay, so settings are basically it just as we know, like the portal Power Apps portal is a SaaS based application, so you are not allowed to change the server side code that Microsoft has written. So you are only allowed to change the platform from the UI level, right? So Microsoft has given you the capabilities of the settings, right? So site settings are basically in the portal to change the behavior of your portal. Okay, so for example, there are different types of site settings. So if I talk about from the authentication perspective, there are basically three types of site settings are there. We have categorized in the three groups: authentication slash registration, authentication slash user manager, and authentication slash application cookies. Okay, so all the site settings related to the authentication registration will start with authentication slash registration. So like, if you want to enable the open registration, if you want to enable the invitation enabled, so these all the features you can, configure using the site settings. Okay, you don't need to write the code. You don't need to change the configuration or the customization of the portal. You just need to enable these site settings. Some user manager specific site settings where, you just need to follow the syntax like authentication slash user manager, and you can see the other site settings related to that. And similar way, we have some application cookies related to site setting. So these are the three broad categories in which we have distributed the site setting related to the portal authentication. Portal user type, I've already discussed about it. So there are basically three types of users we have in the portals: anonymous, authenticated, and administrator. Anonymous, who can access the portal data without having to, log into the system. Authenticated, who are, who have registered on the portal and they are, authenticated to the portal to access the data. Administrator are something who can access anything on the portal, right? They can manage the data from the portal, and they can edit the portal content directly from the portal UI. So administrator are someone who have the access of everything on the portal, right? We don't need to provide any specific web role to, access the data. They can do anything in the portal. User registration. So obviously, like any other website, if you have to, allow user to, access to the portal, we have to uh, ask them, you have to register. So no matter whether they are using local authentication, that means, they are directly putting their username and password on the local identity provider, or whether they are using any other sort of external identities like Facebook, Twitter, Google, or, the Active Directory. Every information, all sort of information of users getting stored in the contact, right, in the dataverse. So user registration is the mandatory step in order to give the access to the portal. Okay. We have two types of registrations. One is open registration. So open registration is basically, anyone can come to the portal and can directly register themselves. So this will create a contact in the CRM. But sometimes when you build design a portal or design a website, you don't want to give the access to your portal to all the users, right? You want to just want to keep the limited audience on your portal. So in that case, we have the option called invitation based registration, right? So this is basically used when you want to invite existing contacts, because there might be a situation that you already have the contacts available in your CRM, but later after 1 or 2 years of the implementation, you got to know, like, we have the requirement to design a portal. So this is a quite common scenario that you later phase, you decide to design the portal where your contacts is already there in the CRM. So in that case, the invitation features basically use. So Asis will going through the invitation process, and will show you that how the invitation process works. Okay. And the second thing, the restrict portal access to limited audience. There might be a situation where you don't want to, openly available portal for everyone for registration, right? So you can restrict them using the invitation process. So like in the image, you can see there is no registration option, right? Only sign in and redeem invitation. So that is the way you can restrict, your portal access to the limited audience. The last one is the portal authentication provider. We have basically two types of provider: local authentication and the external authentication. So local authentication is one of the most common form based authentication model, where your identity means your username and password getting stored in the Microsoft Dataverse. So this is one of the identity which is going to be deprecated soon. So as per the Microsoft, the recommended way to use the default authentication provider as the Azure AD B2C, right? So along with the Azure AD B2C, we have some other external authentication as well that you can also choose as a part of our identity provider. We have the Facebook, we have the Twitter, we have the Azure Active Directory, and we have some other identity provider as well. So we have seen a lot of demos, we have seen a lot of use cases for the local authentication, but I'm not going to show you in this demo how the local authentication works. Obviously, you can use it for your testing purpose, but not for the live environment, because for the live environment, it is recommended that the local authentication is getting deprecated, and the external authentication we are going to use it, right? So in the today's demo, Asis is going to show you some really important tips and tricks how to set up the Azure AD B2C, how to customize the UI of the Azure AD B2C, and some important configurations as well. Asis, do you want me to share the screen or you want to continue?
Yeah, I will continue. I will continue.
All right, please share your screen.
Thank you, Arpit.
Thanks.
Share my screen. I hope my screen is visible to.
Yeah, we can see your screen. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Before we get started, let me give a brief introduction about myself. My name is Ashish Gupta. I am a Power Platform developer at Capgemini. I have expertise in portals, Power Apps, Azure. I do JavaScript programming, PowerShell scripting. I'm also Microsoft certified Power Platform developer and a functional consultant. I have some fundamentals certifications as well. So let's get started with the demo. Here we will be heavily focusing on Azure AD B2C as it is the most recommended authentication provider. So these are the steps which we need to go through to configure Azure AD B2C for Power Apps portals. So first of all, we have to register Azure AD B2C tenant. Then in the tenant, we are going to register an application and we are going to configure these settings. One by one, I'll be walk you through each of these, and then we will be changing the branding of the B2C. Let me head over to my environment. This is my demo environment here, and this will be the portal I'll be using for today's demo. So there are various ways we can configure Azure AD B2C for Power Apps portal. One of the way is in the make.powerapps.com. You can go to settings and you can head over to authentication settings there. There you will see all the identity providers that you can configure. So this is the manual way of configuring Azure AD B2C. There is also a simplified interface that Microsoft has provided, but it's in preview. So if you go to make.preview.powerapps.com and head over to the same page in this, if you go on the settings there, authentication settings, as this is in preview, if you click on Azure B2C now, or I've already configured here, so I'll be adding it again from here. So I'll be selecting Azure AD B2C here, and if I click on next, I'll see that it will fetch all my tenants in Azure in my in my Azure Active Directory. All the B2C tenants it will fetch here. So if you have to make sure that whenever you are login, you have access to your Azure Active Directory, and also you have subscription so that you can create Azure AD B2C tenant. Unfortunately, for this Azure Active Directory, the portal is provisioned in. I don't have a subscription here. Neither I have any Azure Active Directory a B2C tenant here. Neither I can create one due to the subscriptions. So I can link my different B2C tenant from different tenant here. So I'll be logging to my Azure Active Directory where I have subscription. So first of all, we have to register a B2C tenant. For that, you need to have a subscription, and I'll show you how to configure the B2C tenant. So switch over to your directory where you have subscription. So if you head over to the subscription, you need to make sure that you have registered Azure Active Directory in your resource providers. You have to come to subscription and resource providers and search here. This is, I've already registered it. Then if you go to after registering this, if you go to Azure Active Directory and manage tenants, if you try to create a new tenant, then you will be seeing this option to create Azure Active Directory B2C. I've already created one, so I'll switch over to my B2C tenant here. My B2C tenant is 365 CRM org, so I'll switch to this. So I will go to Azure Active B2C. There, this tenant is already there, and we have to register an application here. So we have to register an application here. The steps are: go to new registration and provide a display name, and this is by default selected, that any organization directory if your user is in, or so that can log in. You have to select web as there, and you might see that if you go to the tenant here, you are getting this you will be getting this redirect reply URL here. So you have to put the reply URL here, or you can do it later as well. So I have already registered an application. So this is my application. I've registered PL14. Here I need to do some of the settings that I'll show you. In the authentication part, here you will see your URL which you have put in there, reply URL, and you have to enable access token so that you can return access token to your portal. That's it from the app registration part. Now we'll be looking at user flows. So user flows are basically the business logic that the user has to follow in access to gain the tokens. So it would be like the steps like sign in and sign up and reset password. So a user has to follow, and then user will be returned a token to get the access to the application. So like if I head over to my portal, I have already set it up. So I'll give you just a glimpse of that, how it looks like. So if you can see this sign in, and there's a forgot password. If I click on that, user will be redirected to resetting their password. If I sign up now, then you will be, this is the user flow. So I have set up this user flow here. There are two user flow you need to set up, one for the sign up and sign in, and one for the reset password. If you go to the Azure AD B2C and user flows and click on the new user flow, you would be able to see this sign up and sign in. This is a unified sign up sign in screen that I have set up. If you just want a user to only enable sign in, so you can go with this flow, sign in flow, and the password reset flow is also there. I've already created a sign up sign in flow. I'll show you how to do that. You just have to click on create user flow and just provide the name. After that, you have to go to the properties and make sure that it is on claim representing user flow is on TCP, and also issuer claim is including TCP here. That is the recommended one now. So you have to make sure that this is there. So there are some things which we have to provide to the Azure configuration here. One is the authority URL and the client ID, the redirect URL which is already there for you, and the password reset settings here, default policy ID. These all we will be getting from here Azure Active Directory. So once we create the user flow, we have to make sure that in the user attributes we are returning email address, we are collecting email address, and we have selected these user attributes. And application claims are the attributes. Like user attributes you will be collecting on signing up. So when you go to the sign up right now in my portal, you will see that I am collecting a job title here on sign up. So these are the user attributes you will be collecting from users. And once you are collecting these, this will be stored in the user object in Azure Active Directory user. And then application claims are the data which you are going to return after after authentication is done. So then you will be using this application claims in your portal to update any information in your contact user. You can utilize this out of the box user attributes as well, or you can create some user attributes here as well. So if you go to the user attributes manage, and you can create a user attribute just providing the name and the type of data you want to collect. So I'll be using out of the box user attribute here, but you have to make sure that email address in this flow, you are collecting email address, and application claim you're returning email address. These all are optional. If you want to collect, you can include more of them. After setting this up, uh, you will be providing information in the portal to configure Azure Active Directory B2C here. So what information I'll be collecting from here is, if this is a well-known document, if you click on the sign-in flow here, you will click on run user flow. There you will get the well-known document for this flow. Here you have to note down the issuer URL here, and also same for the sign up sign in, you have to do that. Reset password flow, sorry. So reset password flow also I created, and there you have to return in application claims, you have to make sure you are returning email address here. If you click on run user flow, you will be able to see the well-known document for this flow, and here you will get the issuer URL. But and what are the information is needed? First of all is authority URL. Here you have to put the issuer URL which you will be finding in the sign up sign in user flow. So this is my sign up sign in user flow well-known document, and as you can see this, and here you will be getting issuer URL from here. And then you also have to provide here in the portal the client ID and redirect client ID. Client ID is the ID for your application you have registered in your tenant. So if you go to the Azure AD B2C and the application you have created, PL14 portal authentication app, you will be seeing here the application ID. You have to copy and paste it there. After putting the client ID here, the redirect ID URL is already there. In the default policy ID, you have to put the name of your sign up sign in flow. That name you can find it here. So this is the name. You can copy it from here. This is the this is for sign up sign in, and similarly for reset password flow, you have to copy that and put it here. And in the valid issuer URLs, you have to put the issuer URLs for your both of the flows, for sign up sign in as well. And this is the issuer URL for sign up sign in, and the issuer URL for password reset flow. I've already configured. I will show you. So I have put the authority URL of sign up sign in flow here, which is this one. Client ID, redirect URL is already there. But if you are using a custom domain, if your portal is using custom domain, you have to put your custom domain here. Similarly, in the application registration, you have to update the custom with this reply URL, updated your reply URL in your application registration reply URL. And then you have to put in the policies, sign up sign in flow and reset password flow. Again, I have put the issuer URLs for sign up sign in, and for the password reset flow, comma separated. So these are the comma separated issuer URLs for sign up and sign in. Additionally, now you have a configured application claims there that you will be collecting from the user attributes. You have configured an application which will be application attributes which will be returning from the Azure ready. So if you open the well-known document, you can see that the claims which are which we are returning will appear in this list here. So I am returning job title, and I am also returning email here. So email, you don't need to configure. Email is automatically mapped to your contact email ID. So job title is I have additionally included in here, so I'll be mapping that. So if I go to the portal, in the advanced setting, you can see that there are two mappings that we can map: the registration claims mapping and logins claim mapping. Registration claims mapping are used when your user is signing up. So when at the time of signing up, whatever information it has collected, it will map it to the contact. So I have a contact. I have created an additional column in contact called profession, which I will be mapping it to. Let me show you. So this is a column which I have created one. So if I look at the column properties, I have to get the logical name of that column. So after collecting the logical name from here, I'll be providing here in this. It will come the logical name of the column and equals the name which we are returning from there. So as you can look it in the well-known document here, that we are returning job title. This will be the name you have to put there. And if you are there are more than one, you have to put in this way, comma separated way, the logical name of the column in dataverse contact record, and the attribute which we are returning from there. Similarly, for login claims, now the registration claim will be mapped only once. Now, suppose that in Azure AD B2C, your some of the attributes in the user are updated, so that won't be reflecting directly in the contact. If you want every time user signs up, it should take the updated values from the user object and it should map it to the contact. You need to provide it here so that the values are updated correctly. There are some additional options here: external logout, and that means that if your multiple applications are using this Azure AD B2C, and if you want all of them to log out at the same time, log out from all of the applications, then you can do this external logout. This means federated sign out. Contact mapping with email, make sure that your whatever your user entity is which we are returning from the Azure AD, so it is mapping to the correct email. It will be mapped to the email. So suppose I have a test a demo at the gmail.com in the Azure Active Directory as a user with the email, then if I have a contact with the email ID, same email ID, then it would be mapped to that contact only. Registration enable, this settings enables this B2C registration. If I turn this off, that means I cannot register anymore with this Azure B2C. After configuring all of this, we are good to go with the Azure B2C. I've already configured here. So now we will be covering different scenarios which we can have while using Azure AD B2C in the community feedback as well. In my project experiences, there are some scenarios which we have covered, which are going to cover here, so that so one user case is that there is a new user. So this is a happy flow that a user comes on the portal and signs up first and then tries to signing in. Then a contact will be created for that user. If the contact is not there, otherwise a contact it will be mapped to the existing contact. Let me show you this. So I'm on a portal and I'll be signing up here. I'll be providing my email address here. And the one thing I want to show you here is that while signing up, we should verify who the user is, whether this email ID belongs to this user or not. So to enable this email verification for a user, so we can go into our flow. This all will be configured in our flow because we are using sign up sign in flow here. If we go to the properties of that flow, you will be seeing that we can also enable multi-factor authentication, and we can also enable conditional access policies, so that if you have some restrictions whether your users are belonging to particular users, you want to enforce multi-factor authentication on the particular users, or you want to disable the login for a particular region, so you can create a conditional access here. But for email verification, if you go to the page layout and you select the local sign up page that we are on, as we are on the sign up page here, you can see that email address verification is yes. If I turn it to no, then user this won't ask you for verification, but for security purposes it is recommended to on this email verification. So after verifying the code, I will be putting my password here. Once the code is verified, I will be putting a password here. And the job title which I'm collecting. So the password fields don't match. Let me. Now what would happen is it will sign up, it will create an account in Azure Active Directory, and at the same time it will also create a contact in my Dataverse, and it will map that identity return from the Azure Active Directory to my contact. Let me show you that. If I open Portal Management app here and open the contacts, this is a user I have created right now with this email ID. And if you go to the web authentication part and make sure to select the portal contact form here, you will be seeing that this identity is associated with the contact. As we said that everything related to authentication is traced on the contact record. So here it is associated with it. And if you go to their portal page, now I need to update my first name and last name, and my profile is created here. This was the happy flow that a user comes up, sign up, and then sign in there. There might be another scenario that that you have already have an existing contact. So you may have already an existing contact, and you don't want the user to sign up. I mean, you have the information of a contact and you don't have an account in Azure B2C. Now you want to have the users in your Dataverse to log into the portal without signing up. How can we achieve that? There can be various approach to this. One approach can be that you have a contact and you will ask your contacts to go to the portal and sign up. Now that you have to sign up, and it will basically create your Azure AD B2C account and will map your identity with the existing contact. There might be another scenario that you don't want the user to sign up at all. You just want that user to log in directly. How can we achieve that? We can create the users via the graph API. By calling the graph API, we can automatically create the users for all of the contacts in the Azure AD B2C. Then we will be generating a temporary fast passwords for that users. So that user will be we will send an invitation to the user, then your account is generated with the email and use this temporary password, and we will ask the user to reset their password for the first time they sign in. So let me show you this scenario here. So if I sign out from here and go to portal management app, okay, I will use this contact only. So I will delete the user from the Azure Active Directory, making sure that user does not exist in the Azure Active Directory here. So you can see the user was created here. Yeah, this user was created here. I will delete the user so that to show you the scenario here, that only contact exists for the user, but there is no Azure Active Directory account for that user. I will also dissociate the identity from here. So there is no linkage between the contact and Azure AD B2C right now. So this is a normal contact here which has email, and now I have created a flow here to call the graph API so that I can create a user in Azure Active Directory for this contact. I'll copy the email ID from here.
So this scenario is beneficial when you want to automate your authentication process. So for example, if you already have the contacts available in the CRM and you want to send them the invitation and you don't want user to sign up on the portal, you want to automate this authentication process. So what you can do is you can just create this Power Automate. You can automate that based on the trigger point, maybe on the create of contact, or manually you can trigger this flow. And using this graph API, you will create a user in the Active Directory B2C and then send the invitation to the user. Yes, Ashish.
Yes. So here we will need some of the information like a tenant ID, client secret. So we have to register an application first in your Azure Active Directory so that we can directly call the graph API there and to get the permission there. So I have registered another application here in the directory where my users resides, and I'll go to the app registration, and we have to similarly register an application. There is no much difference here like the previous one we created. So we have to create a normal application, and authentication we are only accessing it via the HTTP calls, so we are not accessing it directly via the users, so we can keep it in this one here. We don't need access tokens here, that's why. So after registering an application, I need to provide permission to this application that it can call the graph API to create the users. So this is we are calling it via the application, so we have to add a permission from here, and this will be the application permission. If you click on the graph API, these are the different permissions. If you are using it via the user, if a user is accessing it in the flow, then you have to give the delegated permissions. Right now my application is accessing it, that's why I'll be giving application permissions here. I have to give the user dot, this is the maximum privilege I'm providing right now to create a user dot read write dot all. So after providing this, you will be you can use this application, and you can create the users. You have to grant permission, access permission, admin consent for this permissions here, and you have to generate a client secret here so that you can provide it in the flow. I have already created one secret here. So I will get the tenant ID and client ID from this application here. This is the client ID we get, and this is the directory ID. This is for this Azure Active Directory, this tenant ID. We have got the client secret. We are going to provide it here in the other audience URL for the graph API. It is graph.microsoft.com, and we have to also provide authority URL where we will be asking the tokens from, login.microsoft.com. Then I have created this flow such that we will be calling this flow to create a user there, where we have to provide the URI would be if I combine this authority URL, audience URL, graph.microsoft.com hyphen v 1.0 users, and in the body it is a post request, and in the body we will be asking that to enable the account and display name. We can also include other attributes in the user, but I have included display name and nickname here. This is an important one here, that we are forcing the user to change the password first time when they log in, signing. So they will be forced to reset their password, and I'm generating the temporary password for this user. We can have different password for different users, but for this scenario I have just created a simple password here. And this is will be signing in will be from email address, and we have to provide the settings here. If I run the flow from here to enter a name and the email ID, I copied from there. I'll be creating a user and nickname. After this flow runs, a user would be created in our Azure Active Directory. If you look at the users here, this user is being created here with the name and information I provided in there. Now if this user, for this user the contact already exists, as I showed you, we already have the contact, but in the web authentication you can see that there is no external identity associated with this user. So what will happen if this user tries to sign in to our portal? Let me head over to my portal and try to sign in with this. I go to Azure B2C. I'll provide the same email ID and the password, the temporary password we have generated from the Graph API call. When I try to sign in, I'll be taken to this page it will show you that your password has expired. Please change it to new password. And one more setting you have to enable in your user flows to basically enable this. I forgot earlier. If you go to your user flows and go to your sign in flow in the properties, if you go to the down, you have to enable this force password reset, so that next time it will enforce, the UI will enforce the user to come on this page. And when I change the password here, I have to provide my original password.
So meanwhile, this is logging. Let me add you one more scenario here. Like there might be a situation where you are using any, old identity provider like local authentication, Facebook, Twitter, something like that. And now Microsoft has recommended to start using the Azure AD B2C. So you might have a questions like, how can I migrate my existing, the identity provider to the Active Directory, right? So this could be a way that you can automate your the legacy application, the legacy active sorry that the users to your Active Directory, right? So for example, if you already have registered on your portal using Facebook, so you must have registered with your email address, right? So you need to create a Active Directory user with the same email address that you were using for the Facebook, and ask users to generate the new password, right? So this could be the situation, or the approach for you migrating your application or migrating your identity provider from one identity to another identity. Yeah, Ashish, go ahead.
Yes. So as we can see that we are logged in with this user, and there is no new contact being created with this with that Azure Active Directory, and we didn't need to sign up, we just have signed in. And if we refresh this, we can see that the identity is associated with this email ID, the contact with the same email ID. So this might be the approach we can follow. Another approach can be, if you already have a contact, and if you don't want the user to with a temporary, if you don't want to send the user with a temporary password, you can directly ask the user to in the email to send the reset password link here in the email, and they will be directed to the reset password. I'll show you that. So if a contact already exists and you created a user account with the Graph API, and you don't want the user to send the generated password, so you can come in the flows and go to the reset password flow, copy the link from here, and just send this link to the user. So the user will be redirected to me. Let me first sign out from here. So if you send this link to the user will be redirected to a screen where he has to provide an email address that he is already using in Azure B2C. So when he provides the email address, he has to verify, and then he'll be asked to change the password. After verifying the code, he will be asked to change the password. So this can be another approach if you have existing contact and you want to migrate it to Azure B2C. So that's it. And another scenario, there can be one more scenario, that you don't want you already have a Azure B2C user. Earlier in the user case 2, we already have a contact, but we didn't have a Azure B2C user. Now we have Azure B2C user, and we don't have a contact, and we don't the user still to sign up, don't provide the information there. So how can we do that? If a user only exists in Azure B2C, let me just delete this already existing user from here.
I think we are running out of time, Asis. I think you can just verbally tell like what could be the approach in that case.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
if a user exists in Azure B2C and it tries to sign in, if it's the same email ID, the contact we don't have a contact, so it will automatically create a contact for you and associate this identity with the user with the contact, and you will be logged in. There is also another scenario we have, that if you're using a Facebook or Twitter and you don't want to use anymore, and you want to switch it to Azure B2C, so you cannot just make it disappear from the portal, the Facebook and Twitter what you were using earlier, but Microsoft has provided a way that you can present it in a better way. You can mark it deprecated. After marking it deprecated, users won't be able to sign up, but when a user tries to sign in, they will be redirected to a page saying that this identity provider is now deprecated. You should use the non-deprecated one, and I'll show you that.
That is very important site setting actually, because for example, there are some of the clients who who have been using the local authentication on their production environment, or they already set up the local authentication. Now they want to migrate to the Azure AD B2C. So what could be the way? Yeah.
So this is a site setting you can create, and you can mark it through here. This is for local login. If you want to deprecate others as well, then there is a protocol, there is a syntax that you have to follow. If you go to the Microsoft documentation, migrate to Azure AD B2C, then you can see that you have to follow this syntax: authentication, then protocol of that authentication provider, the provider name, then mark it deprecated. So I have already created one for the Facebook and local login. If I do here, mark here deprecated, and if I mark them deprecated, I need to clear the cache. take some time. So when your user will try to sign in, he will be redirected to a page that says that this authentication provider is already deprecated. So for the user which we were using here, the contact here, I want to show you for this particular contact. If it were if this contact were using if user, I need to create another user.
You can just show it by just clicking on the link, Assis, and show that how the message appears.
Yes. If you try to sign in the Facebook account, it won't allow you to register because this is deprecated. But if you try to sign in with the existing record, let me just set a local authentication, local username and password for this user, and I'll just quickly show you. So suppose the user we were using this local authentication for this user, and I try to sign in with that. This is a username. It will redirect me to this page stating that you have signed in with the account that is no longer supported. And if you want to continue using this portal, we need to migrate the account, and these are the non-deprecated accounts which we can log into. And if I try to use Azure AD here, then I will be you can see that we are now logged in with Azure AD, the same contact here, and we are signed in with the same email. Now if you look at that in this here, earlier it was no. If I refresh it now, as we have already migrated to Azure AD, then it will be disabled for this user, as he has already migrated to Azure AD. If we go to the web authentication, it will be login will be disabled for this, as local login is disabled, and the identity Azure AD is now associated with this. So this user has successfully migrated to Azure AD. Similarly, you can do it for other authentication providers as well. Thank you, Arpit. Yeah, this.
Okay, thanks a lot, Assis. Just last one thing I would like to highlight here is there could be a situation where you have to migrate all the contacts identity in one go. So in that case, you can write the Power Automate and send the bulk invitation to all the users who are using the legacy identity provider, and they can start using the Azure AD B2C either by generating the temporary password, or you can send them the password reset link so that they can use the similar email address that they were using in the legacy application or the identity provider. But of course, they can generate a new password or can create the new password, right? So this is the way how you play with the Azure AD B2C. I'm sure like 1 hour is not enough to demonstrate each and everything. But if you have any questions related to the setups or anything related to the B2C, just do let us know online or offline. You can get in touch with me and Asis. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, everyone. And if you have any questions, we will surely take it up.